Imagine standing 11 minutes away from the greatest footballing miracle of the century. Your team is 2 goals up against the reigning world champions. The stadium is shaking, millions at home are on their feet, and history is practically written. Then, a single man walks over to a tiny monitor, and with a flick of his wrist, he doesn't just disallow a goal. He tears down an entire nation's dream. What happened to Egypt in that stadium wasn't just a tough refereeing call. It was a sporting execution. As we speak, the Egyptian Football Federation has officially filed a massive complaint demanding the absolute expulsion of French referee François Letexier and his entire crew from the World Cup. But as FIFA quietly reviews the footage behind closed doors, a deeper, far more disturbing reality is beginning to surface. When you open the official rulebook and look at the financial architecture of modern football, a chilling truth becomes impossible to ignore. Egypt was never supposed to win this match. If you want to understand how deep this footballing scandal really goes and stay updated on the hidden forces pulling the strings behind the world's biggest games, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe right now. Turn on notifications so you never miss an investigative breakdown like this one. Your support helps us uncover the truths that the mainstream media is too afraid to touch. To truly grasp the scale of the explosion rocking the football world right now, we have to look at the massive imbalance of power that defined this fixture from the very beginning. On one side, you have France, a footballing superpower backed by billions of euros in infrastructure, a squad of global superstars, and massive political influence within the halls of FIFA. On the other side, you have Egypt, a proud footballing nation with an incredible history in African football, but entering this tournament as the ultimate underdogs. Nobody expected them to survive the group stage, let alone dominate the world champions. The world assumed France would cruise through this match, treating it as a mere formality on their march to another trophy. But football has a beautiful habit of ignoring scripts. From the opening whistle, the Egyptian players ran themselves into the ground, executing a tactical masterclass that left the French superstars looking completely bewildered. By the time the second half was underway, Egypt had shockingly put themselves 2 goals ahead. It was a scoreline that sent shockwaves through Paris, Zurich, and every major sports betting market across the globe. The impossible was happening. A historic upset was unfolding right before our eyes, and the football establishment was on the verge of total meltdown. But here is where things get disturbing. To understand exactly how this dream was systematically dismantled, we need to look at the precise, minute-by-minute timeline of how the final moments of this match descended into absolute chaos. With only 11 minutes left on the clock, Egypt launched a devastating counterattack, putting the ball into the back of the net for what appeared to be a definitive, match-ending third goal. The stadium erupted. The Egyptian bench emptied in pure joy. It was the moment a nation realized they had actually done it. But the celebration was brutally cut short. François Letexier, the French referee in charge of the match, paused. He placed his hand over his earpiece, listening intently to the video assistant referees whispering from a dark room deep within the stadium. The referee then made the universal signal for a VAR review and walked slowly toward the pitchside monitor. For several agonizing minutes, he stared at the screen, looking at angles that the broadcast audience was not initially permitted to see. When he walked back onto the pitch, he pointed away from the center circle, wiping Egypt's third goal completely off the scoreboard and issuing a highly controversial decision that turned the momentum of the entire game. What happened next raised serious questions about the psychological collapse of the match officials. Caught in a state of shock and disbelief, the Egyptian players lost their defensive focus. Seizing on the sudden chaos, France pushed forward with aggressive intensity, scoring 2 rapid-fire goals in the dying minutes of regular time to force the match into extra time. By the time the final whistle blew in extra time, Egypt's historic lead had completely vanished, and they were knocked out of the tournament. The immediate aftermath of the match was nothing short of a diplomatic crisis in sports. Within hours of the final whistle, the Egyptian Football Federation president called an emergency press conference, visibly shaking with anger. He announced that Egypt had officially filed an extensive, formal protest with FIFA. The federation did not merely ask for an explanation. They demanded that François Letexier and his entire officiating crew be permanently barred from refereeing another match in this World Cup. French media outlets quickly began reporting that senior figures within FIFA were quietly reviewing the referee's performance, looking for a way to manage the massive public relations nightmare. Yet, when pressed for an official statement, FIFA offered only a cold, standard response, confirming they received a letter but refusing to elaborate further. This is the part few people are talking about. When you analyze the video footage side by side with the official FIFA tournament rulebook, the inconsistencies are glaring. The justification used to disallow the goal was an incredibly obscure, highly subjective interpretation of an offside interference rule that is almost never enforced in modern high-stakes matches. Why did the VAR room choose that exact hyper-specific moment to intervene in a phase of play that had occurred nearly 40 seconds before the ball actually entered the net? Why were the television broadcast cameras completely restricted from showing the definitive angle of the alleged infraction until long after the match had already concluded? These gaps in logic leave us with deeply uncomfortable questions. Did the referee act purely on a genuine, albeit catastrophic, misinterpretation of the rules? Or was there an underlying pressure to ensure that a major, highly profitable football market like France did not suffer a humiliating exit in the early stages of the knockout rounds? If the system is designed to guarantee absolute fairness, why does it consistently seem to protect the traditional superpowers of the sport when they find themselves on the brink of elimination? The political and economic impact of this single refereeing decision stretches far beyond the boundaries of a football pitch. For Egypt, a country facing complex economic challenges, football is not just entertainment. It is a powerful social glue, a source of national pride, and an economic driver that brings immense joy and unity to millions of ordinary people. The theft of this victory has left a profound sense of grief and collective anger across the entire country. Furthermore, this incident threatens to completely erode the public's trust in the governing bodies of international sport. It connects directly to a dark history of past cases where smaller, developing nations have traveled to major tournaments only to find themselves facing an invisible wall of institutional bias. When the rules of the game are applied inconsistently based on the stature of the country wearing the jersey, football ceases to be a fair sport and instead becomes a corporate enterprise where the outcome is heavily weighted in favor of the highest bidder. The public reaction and media response across the world has exposed a massive divide in how football is perceived globally. On social media, millions of fans from Africa, the Middle East, and neutral nations have rallied behind Egypt, using various platforms to break down the footage and openly accuse FIFA of systemic corruption. Former international players and respected pundits have expressed their outright disbelief at the call, stating that the integrity of the VAR system has been completely compromised. Meanwhile, the response from the mainstream French media and official channels has been markedly different. Many European commentators have downplayed the controversy, chalking it up to a standard, technically correct application of the law, while subtly patronizing the Egyptian team for failing to maintain their composure in the final minutes. This striking contrast in perspectives highlights a deeply rooted frustration among global football fans who feel that a small elite controls the narrative and decides who is allowed to succeed on the world stage. What happens next will be a critical test for the future of international sports governance. FIFA is currently facing immense pressure to handle the formal complaint filed by the Egyptian Federation. There's a strong possibility that an internal investigation will be conducted into the communication logs between François Letexier and the video assistant referee room. However, sports history teaches us that these processes are rarely transparent. We may see the referee quietly sidelined from the remainder of the tournament under the guise of standard squad rotation, allowing FIFA to avoid a public admission of guilt while avoiding further controversy. Legal experts note that the match result itself will almost certainly stand, as international sports tribunals are notoriously hesitant to overturn official match outcomes, meaning Egypt's exit remains permanent despite whatever findings might emerge in the review. It leaves a deeply unsettling realization for anyone who still believes in the pure romance of sport. We want to believe that 11 players on a pitch can shock the world through sheer determination, tactical brilliance, and hard work. We want to believe that the underdog can win. But as long as multi-billion-dollar tournaments are governed by opaque systems, subjective rules, and unaccountable officials, the beautiful game will always remain under a dark cloud of suspicion. Was Egypt truly defeated by a superior opponent? Or were they simply stopped by a system that couldn't afford to let them win. Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the World Cup is structurally rigged against smaller nations, or was this just a tragic refereeing error? Let us know what you think, and we will see you in the next investigation.